Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Not That Important.
Good. How you
How's it
doing,
going,
bro?
Arman? I'm doing good. A lot going on in the world of cricket, and not in the least all the PSL franchises twerking for Naseem Shah. It's a pretty crazy trade window right now. उसके अलावा obviously पाकिस्तान टीम में कप्तानी बदल गई है, कोचिंग बदल गई है, सारा
हालात
कुछ
बदल गए,
जज्बात
जज्बात
बदल
बदल
गए.
गए.
But yeah, so a lot going on. Even though like the World Cup just wrapped up, like again 10 days or so ago. Before we get into all that, I wanted to talk about last episode where हमने India के World Cup final हारने पे काफी मजा लिया था. So what I want to say about that is that our view of the cricketing world is definitely shaped from a Pakistani perspective. We're Pakistani fans. This is the Pakistan Cricket Podcast. I don't think we've ever claimed otherwise. And if that wasn't apparent throughout the episodes we've done so far, I want to set the record straight right here. Obviously, we're also cricket fans, and so we try to analyze what goes on the field from a neutral perspective. But naturally, our personal sentiments also seep into that, right? I can't deny that I at least get a certain degree of pleasure from watching India lose games. Like it's comparable to the same way, like I, as a United fan in football, enjoy watching Liverpool lose, right? This happens in sports. It's a part of the culture of rival fans and things like that. And at the end of the day, I feel like there's plenty of, or there's definitely a place for banter in the sporting world, as long as it doesn't cross the line, right? You don't get personal with anyone. You just keep it light. I think there's a place for that. There's obviously been a lot of memes coming out of India in this World Cup mocking Pakistan's performance, and I'm not even gonna lie, some of them were like very funny. Obviously, in the moment, you don't find them funny because your team is losing, but sometimes you just have to take that on the chin, right? And it goes both ways. The issue is with Pakistan and India's relationship. Like we've spoken a lot about not wanting to get politics into this podcast, but it's very difficult to depoliticize that relationship just because of everything that surrounds it. Like let's say, for example, um, Pakistan fans were not really allowed in this World Cup, right? And even journalists were only given the visa to travel to India later on in this World Cup. So these are things that do happen. And again, as Pakistan fans, we have a right to air those grievances and stand up for our team and represent our team's interests. If you disagree, that's completely fair. Like there's two sides to every argument. I respect other people's opinions as well. And again, there's like a few Indian friends of ours who are listening to this. They're always welcome to come on and represent their side's opinions as well. And one final thing, just to draw a line under this, like just because we talked about fans not being there in the World Cup and anything like that, doesn't mean that we're blaming Pakistan's performances on any of these issues. We were shit in the World Cup, like simple as that. We deserved not to make it to semifinals. There's plenty of flaws in our own cricketing structure, and like that isn't like we can't blame anyone else apart from our own governance of the sport for that, right? And no one recognizes that more than us as Pakistan cricket fans, and some of those issues we'll talk about today as well.
Obviously, our perspectives are completely shaped by us being Pakistani cricket fans. So we're gonna have we're gonna see certain things that we see as injustices against ourselves, and we're gonna stand up for those things. And but like you said, it's never that's never the reason why the performance is up or down. It's just something we notice, regardless of whether Pakistan win or not. It's something we notice, and I guess that's just our perspective on it. And like Shah said, anybody who disputes that is more than welcome to not only have their opinion, but to add us on it as well. So we're always ready for that.
And speaking of like our performance on the pitch, obviously it wasn't great, and we been meaning to do like a sort of debrief of the World Cup for a while. So let's just get into to some of those reasons, Arman, because like it was a very disappointing World Cup campaign. Like हमारी काफी उम्मीदें थी ahead of the campaign, or like the team wasn't able to deliver on that, right? So what went wrong like
What
on the
went right on the
pitch?
pitch?
Yeah, honestly, it might just be a shorter conversation to have, but yeah, for the purpose of this conversation, like the first thing I want to point out is that our like star power did not deliver, right? Like the core of the Pakistan squad in this World Cup was similar to that in the 2019 World Cup in England that narrowly missed out on the semi-finals. We had Fakhr Zaman and Imam ul Haq opening, Babar Azam one down. We had Shadab Khan and Shaheen Afridi leading the bowling attack. All of these guys were 4 years more experienced, closer to like what you'd say are their primes. And so I think it was natural for us to expect, especially with their performances in the lead up to the World Cup. And also the fact that Baber, even though this is his first ODI World Cup, he's already had two world events before this as captain. He's a more or a fairly experienced leader, or he was going into this World Cup. But there was a sudden loss of form, starting with Fakhar Zaman and him being dropped from the team after one game, and then the rest of the players as well.
Yeah, it goes into a long list of different things. I think just seeing your whole core group lose form at like the same time, and you think that the next game is the game, the next game is the game, but this was such an extended run of poor form from the most important of players. I'm honestly just happy that it's over at this point. This was a very toxic World Cup for so many
Yeah.
reasons. I wanted to know your take on this. Shout out Mustafa. Mustafa was actually talking about this with me a few days ago. I think the preparation, whether you call it over preparation with how much cricket the guys had played, or under preparation for the conditions, which is, I mean, like we play in Pakistan. How different can it be from India?
Yeah.
And then squad depth, and not just squad depth within the 15. Again, something as simple as you saw all these other teams have injuries. Pandya with India, they look better without him. Honestly, not saying they were, but it didn't affect them. Anrik
Yeah.
Nokia went out. Kane Williamson damn near played like two games the whole tournament, but they were fine. And with us,
Yeah.
we have a 19, 20-year-old bowler, talented as he is, go out, and that was like it broke the back of the team completely. There wasn't a very obvious replacement in the system of someone who can bowl with pace, with accuracy, with the new ball for an extended period of time, a la 10 overs within three spells. So a lot of the lack of first class cricketing experience with the bowlers especially got exposed massively throughout this entire tournament.
I think a lot of that comes into like the planning. We thought we were in good shape, but in hindsight, obviously it's easy to say in hindsight, but like yeah, we hadn't prepared a like for like replacement for Naseem Shah to be able to fit into that role and actually like alleviate pressure from the rest of the bowling attack, right? Because if we come to Shaheen, like he wasn't his usual self in this World Cup either. His pace was down. There was speculation about his fitness because of that. I don't think there was actually any major fitness issues for him. It was more just because of how we were seeing him bowl. He didn't get any swing with the new ball. Like there's no first over magic that we usually expect from him. I think he only got one power play wicket in the entire World Cup. Like, I think against Bangladesh, if my memory serves me correctly. But
Still got
to his
18
credit, he still
wickets.
adapted and
So
finished
that's the
with
quality
20,
of him.
yeah, 20 odd wickets in the World Cup. But I think given the performances from the rest of the bowling attack and given his team not being there, we needed early wickets from him even more. Like he needed to elevate his performance. So that's one of the reasons where I think we fell short. Um, and coming back to your point about preparation, like we couldn't really figure out our best 11 throughout the tournament, right? Even towards the end, we had Agha Salman playing one game, we had Shadab playing one game, Osama Mir playing, Nawaz playing. Like nothing was set in stone. We weren't able to figure out that balance
Someone
throughout
has to
the
perform though,
tournament.
bro, for them to set their name in stone. And nobody who bowled spin
Yeah.
as like their 9 to 5 job did anything near setting their name in stone on that side of the ball. So every change that they made was one that I agreed with before the game. I think 90% of the changes they made throughout the games were something that I was completely on board with. Nobody put their hand up. So I think a lot of it goes down to that.
Yeah, and I think on the spinners, like obviously very mediocre throughout the World Cup. We've spoken a lot about it. At the end of the day, the numbers speak for themselves. Like only Sri Lanka had fewer wickets than Pakistan spinners in this World Cup, and I think even if they did, I'd pretty like clearly say that we're the worst
They didn't
spin
even
bowling
have their
side
main
in this
guy.
competition.
They,
Yeah. And if we talk about Shadab, like you look at the development of like someone like Adam Zampa or Adil Rashid, like these guys weren't always seen as elite options, but when tournaments came or the tournaments came to deliver, like they were able to up their skill and actually perform to that level. Meanwhile, like Shadab, who had a pretty good start to his career, like in 2017 Champions Trophy, World Cup 2019, it looked like this would be the tournament for him to take his game to the next level, but he and the team as a whole just fell apart, both in terms of like numbers and what you saw from him, but also just the eye test and watching him bowl. Like it just felt like it was either going to be a full toss or it was going to be like a long hop that was like pulled away for six. Like there was no consistency, and I think his performance really summed up Pakistan's campaign as a whole, right? Because he was our vice captain, he was the guy
He's
we
always
were
a good
relying
gauge for how
on.
we're
He'd been
performing,
someone.
right? I think you'd agree too. Like the time where
Yeah,
Pakistan seems
exactly.
to be trending towards its peak, Shadab is invariably doing something, whether it's like pulling off magic in the field or scoring useful runs or getting important wickets. And I mean the runs were there, but the bowling energy was really lacking. And then moving away from him because I think we've like lambasted him enough throughout like the course of this tournament. He needs to play first class cricket, as is the case with many of these bowlers. I think the most disappointing spinner for me was actually Nawaz, because with Nawaz, he has a reputation of being able to spin the ball on non-spinning conditions, and then you see the other left-arm spinners, right, like a Mitchell Santner, a Jadeja. I'm missing a few people for sure, but he didn't really get a consistent run of games, but he didn't have that thing where he was restricting runs or taking wickets. Uh, I think Imad Wasim's retirement, which we'll talk about later, came at a really good time for Nawaz, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, bowling, batting, everything. It just wasn't our tournament. Nothing really went. You can also argue about leadership and planning and bravery, all these things.
Dwelling on the leadership point, like obviously spoke about not being able to settle on 11. Obviously, part of that was to do with the form of the players, but even just taking some brave calls. Like, I think we dropped Imam one game too late. Like, if we actually had to put everything on the line, he should have been dropped for that South Africa game, but we hesitated to make that decision. And then in-game management, like yes, the bowling attack wasn't good, but it didn't seem like we had too much of a plan or a plan B for how to attack with the spinners beyond like getting through their overs. It seemed like the only hope was always, okay, the pacers will come back at the end and they'll like wrestle the game back a little bit. And again, that cost you in games like that against Afghanistan, which we don't even look at as like a regret in this tournament because we were comprehensively beaten in that game, right? And again, the over reliance on Shaheen in all phases of the game um, wasn't fair on him either, and it essentially overall cost us in
It
this
just before
tournament. Generally, the course or the development of this side, it seemed like overall we didn't really learn from the past in terms of like the previous tournament that we had. Like we lost out on net run rate then, but our batting continued to remain conservative in the power play. Like Imam Al Haq, obviously, like we're not saying that he shouldn't have been in the team performed and he has the numbers to back it up. But if you look at it overall, objectively, he has a strike rate of 70 in the power play. If you're batting that one pace, at the end of the day, puts pressure on the rest of the batting lineup.
that
And I
wasn't
think
really
that
the problem
conservative
in this World
approach,
Cup, though, was it,
for
bro? His I don't think he would
it's
play in any of the games. I just think that he didn't score. Honestly, like all the stuff you're saying is true, bro.
yeah.
But these are things we knew leading up to the tournament, and you and me still had them as a contender, right?
No, but we had that. We had him at that strike rate alongside Fakhar Zaman,
Yeah.
who was excelling, right? And Babar, who was really dominating. Well, if you look at it in this tournament, Babar himself didn't perform. Like he got out
Leave
cheaply.
Babur to the
It sort
side for
of.
now, bro. Leave Babur to the side. I don't think Imam ever batted long enough for his strike rate to be an issue, if we're being honest.
But even if he didn't, even if it didn't impact this game necessarily, like that is emblematic of why Pakistan isn't moving forward in one day cricket, right? Like, are we able to, if we look forward and see how to improve in the next and coming World Cups and campaigns, is like a player like that really gonna take
Bro,
us where we want to
the
go?
problem I have with that is before this, we were talking about how this is the best top three we've ever had, and they're so consistent, and Fakhr is the counterfoil. Your points are not wrong. We
No, but bro, the consistency comes like obviously that is important, right? And if he was able to perform to that consistent level, then maybe those flaws would have been hidden a little bit, and then you get to like a 250, 260 score with like a few overs left, and the rest of the bottom order can actually take advantage of that and excel. But these guys
तो
didn't
वो
convert
मैं
any of
बोल
those
रहा हूँ.
scores,
That's what I'm
and so
saying
that
ना.
becomes an issue. But it becomes an issue
No,
when you
but
don't
bro, तुम
convert your
कोई भी
scores,
मैच
right?
उठा के देख लो. कौन सा मैच ऐसा था? I'm not defending him. You guys, like I'm not a massive
Mhm.
Imam fan at all, but he didn't ever bat long enough for it to matter. India, he batted at a decent enough pace. Netherlands, he batted at a decent enough pace. Australia, he
Yeah,
made a run of ball 70. He just didn't score. I think that was the main issue.
my point was not that he or any of his batting affected us in this World Cup. But when you allow that sort of batting to like take place in your team and you don't challenge players like that to evolve and grow their game further, that becomes emblematic of the
Sure.
issues that are holding your team back. If you're happy in that sort of environment and within those limitations, then that's fine, but you're not actually going to grow and develop your
Bro,
team
like
to the
fine,
next
yes,
level.
they don't play the most modern cricket, but if Babur and Imam had 2 centuries, 3 centuries each, we would have won a couple of those games. Whatever the striker would have been, if he played the way he was expected to, if he lived up to his ratio of centuries per innings, all that stuff, one of those games you probably would have won, bro. So it looks worse. I
This
just
is,
think, in my
yeah,
opinion, it looks worse because he didn't score. Of course, if he scored, it might not have been at the
yeah.
strike rate we loved. But if he just came in and did the damn job we were expecting, he didn't even do that, right? If he did that and we were in this position, then I'm all for
Mm.
what you're saying. But wo to usne kiya bhi nahi, na?
Mm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I was just trying to use
Yeah,
Imam as like an example of our own team and the mindset we're in, rather than specifically criticizing his own strike rate. And leading like to the next thing I was gonna say was just a lack of game awareness from like the lower order as well, because there are so many games where we didn't bat the
not
full
one,
50
not
overs. I can
one,
remember the game against South
not one
Africa.
game.
Yeah,
Great point.
exactly. So I think
नहीं
Afghanistan.
वो भी हमने शायद उसमें, हाँ, अफगानिस्तान मैच में आई थिंक शायद किया था, but that's a great point.
Yeah, but like South Africa wali game mein, for example, like Nawaz is batting
Bro,
well, throws his wicket away at a
and literally 10 runs
completely
there would have
idiotic
been
time.
you would have been in the semifinals probably. If you score an extra 10 15 runs there, you're probably in the semifinals.
But I think that's what my major gripe here is that we weren't good enough to qualify for the semis. But if capitalizing on those small
Absolutely.
key moments, we would have been there despite in spite of all
100%,
the shit
100%.
that came before that, right? Like for example, you look at moments like the India game, like you get a good start, can't capitalize on that, have like the
Leave
biggest
about 7
collapse
overs on the
you'll
table,
ever
right? Am
see.
I say kuch tha, I
Exactly.
think, right?
Yeah. Obviously, we don't want to harp on too much about like the Australia game and Osama's drop
Yeah.
catch, but that's another key moment. And then for me, even bigger than that, when you were on course to chase down 360 odd against Australia, all you had to do was see out Adam Zampa's last over,
Yeah,
and you're not able to do that. Secondly, we had key players losing wickets to someone like Marcus Stoinis in that game. You know, these sort of moments are what define you as a team, and we just
for
weren't
sure.
able to
For
do
sure.
anything
No
then, right?
argument there. Just an inability to show any type of killer instinct when it really mattered. Except for the New Zealand truncated game, amazing, but we'll put that to the side. I think South Africa was really the only game where we saw that killer instinct. Unfortunately, we couldn't get over the line there. But even then, in that game, so many mistakes. Like Shadab and Saud got it to a point where we're blaming Nawaz and the lower order guys. But like even before their partnership, the guys at the top had kind of ruined the game in itself, and just different things like we cry for out of the box ideas, right? But then it seems that when they have out of the box ideas, they don't make sense. Like sending Ifti above South when both the spinners are on, that kind of stuff. Like it just wasn't it this time around. It just wasn't it from anybody. I think the only guy who like left the tournament with like a net positive is probably some of the younger guys, maybe like Abdullah Shafiq and Wasim Jr. Is there Rizwan? But
And
bro,
Rizwan.
Hux, this is the thing. Yes, Rizwan, but nobody went and scored 500-600 runs. As great as Rizwan played, he had a very good tournament. But we
Yeah.
needed him or Babur or Imam or Fakhr, one of these guys. And this is why, like, a lot of people have a lot of gripes with the bowling. I'm arguably a little bit more disappointed with the batting because bowlers Jobio, these are not bowling friendly conditions. The batters, how many centuries did we have in this tournament? Right?
No, like absolutely. And the games that
Yeah,
we did have centuries, we won, right? Like you doing again. And honestly, we can talk about the rest of the batting lineup, but at the end of the day, like the buck rests
yeah,
with your best players. It rests with the guy,
yeah.
the captain, Babar. I don't know if it was captaincy pressure. I don't know what it was. Like he seemed to be playing within himself. The way he got out in all the games, there wasn't a single time where you could say there was an unplayable delivery or anything like that. आधे से ज़्यादा दफा वो mid wicket पे caught हुआ है to like players like Colin Ackerman, Adam Zampa, Gus Atkinson. I think even against Afghanistan, he got caught
Yeah.
within
Go
the
ahead, man.
circle trying to accelerate. So it just seemed like he didn't have that belief or commitment that you would need from him in terms of committing to his shots and seeing it through.
That's
It
a
was like
great point.
half-hearted efforts, and eventually he got caught. And even the other games, like the ones like where he made 50s against South Africa, caught behind Tripoli, kind of unlucky dismissal there, but whatever. Sri Lanka as well, trickled down the leg side against India, bowled by Siraj, just didn't anticipate the ball coming in a little bit and trying to cut it. It just overall wasn't
A
his
lot of
tournament
unlucky
at all.
dismissals
And
in there
I
too,
honestly,
right? If we're just being fair to the guy.
yes, unlucky, but unlucky you can say once or twice, but eight times. And also, like when the team is so dependent on you. And I don't know if it was the lack of trust in what was to come below him that because he was a little bit conservative as well in most games. Like there wasn't a game where you saw Babar come out and be his like free flowing dominant best. It seemed like he was playing
Yeah.
within himself. Now I don't know if that was just a conscious effort because, like I said, he's worried about of the batting depth, or if it was just like him, not being able to deliver at that stage with the pressure that came with the captaincy and everything that was
Probably
unfolding
a of everything.
behind
Yeah.
the
I
scenes
no,
there.
not to say that all of this. I think two or three of them were genuinely unlucky, and the rest of them were just like, you know,
And you say like you say Rizwan like should have scored five six
I'm
hundred
saying
runs or like,
somebody. I'm
but
saying
I think
somebody
he's
scored five
Babar
or
is
six
the guy.
hundred runs.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't think like Rizwan ended up with 450, 500 runs almost. I don't think we can really like
No,
single him out
bro,
as
Rizwan,
someone.
I'm saying this as a respect to how good I believe he is. What are the other number fours doing?
Yeah,
Daryl Mitchell.
yeah.
What's that lad's name? Shreyas Iyer. Like these guys. I don't consider Rizwan less than any of those guys. But after that Sri Lanka game, when did he kick on and make 100, bro? When these other guys are scoring hundreds on hundred, 50, 60 से काम नहीं चलने वाला था.
It won't, but like you don't see number fours like consistently scoring in almost every game, right? Like even Shreyas Iyer had his like a few games
Sure,
where it was
sure.
off. Obviously, he had a couple beginnings. Like Rizwan got off like to a fantastic start, but at some point, someone else had to step up and support him, and I think that frustration tried to seep into him as well. In that South Africa game, he came out just to like
Yeah, I didn't. It was
slog.
an
He wasn't
interesting
even.
innings for sure. But bro, what the point that I'm trying to make is you said it right there. People don't score hundreds on hundreds or consecutively like that. But bro, the teams who are winning, the teams who got to the final four, those players were scoring all the time, bro. They were. De Kock scored the whole tournament. Kohli scored the whole tournament. Sharma scored the whole tournament. Mitchell scored the whole tournament.
I get I get your point, but I would say like those guys are fine. Mitchell ke lava, top three
I
guys, and those
mean,
are the guys you
bro,
generally would expect that from. But I get your point. Like we respect or we expect Rizwan or we judge him
he's
by those
that. I
levels
believe he's
because
that
like
good.
we
I
actually
do
rate
believe
him,
he's that
right?
good, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying
No.
he's like. I'm not saying he's at level with all those players, but he's good enough to make a considerable impact throughout the duration of a tournament. I know he is, and that's like a testament to that
Mhm.
is the fact that bro, like he had starts in every game, every single game. It's not like he was getting it
Yeah.
in duck bow dua. He was throughout the first 5 6 games. He had to start every single time. So I'm not saying you have to make all of those hundreds, but going big in one of those, you're we're putting that pressure on you because you've earned that pressure, right?
Yeah, for sure. We haven't even talked about like the other pacers apart from um, Shaheen. Like Haris had a horrible World Cup as well. Hassan, like maybe a decent start, but not able to capitalize on that. Junior
Junior
showed
showed a
some
lot of
spark,
spark. Stop
but yeah,
it.
overall,
Junior showed a lot of spark.
yeah, yeah, no, you did for sure. I'm not trying to
He's my
downplay it at
favorite.
all. I was just
Yeah.
talking about in the context of like it was a little bit,
He was
what could he have
outstanding,
really
bro. He
done
was
at that point?
incredible.
Like, yeah,
Given the role he had to play and with the senior bowlers around him not delivering, अगर वो न्यूजीलैंड में वो नहीं खेल रहा होता उनके 450 होते bro. He was really really good. Hassan, fine. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if we could have expected too much more. I did, but fair enough. There were some impactful performances, bro. As terrible as Haris Rauf was, I don't think he was as terrible as how. Like, I don't think he's as terrible as other people do. In this tournament. Because
I don't think
no,
he's
no, I'm
a
not saying
terrible
that. I'm
bowler.
saying
I think he
like in this World Cup,
didn't.
he had
Yeah.
terrible phases, but उसने impact भी डाला मुख्तलिफ phases में.
उसने impact डाला, but like when you come out to bowl, like I was honestly feeling sorry for him. Every time he
Yeah,
came out, he got hit for three fours in the first over. And that's at some point, like that's on you as a bowler. Yeah, do something different. थोड़ी like pace vary कर लो. Catcher से full जोश से आता है और फिर वो भी batsman को भी ये like they're prepared for that and
ये तो है, ये
they
तो है.
he gets destroyed.
It's bro, but it's crazy.
So
Like you
yeah,
see, his like numbers are a complete inverse of what they would be. Like bowlers usually go five in the power play, 5 runs and over, and tens at the end. उसका कुछ बिल्कुल ही अलग था, bro.
he's such
Saud
a
Shakil, you
normal
give him
kid.
last year
But
for this in this tournament
I think, given the situations he found himself in, he could have also,
a
similar
little
to
bit
what you
better.
said about Rizwan, taken his game to another level. I feel like that's the issue I have with the entire team. I feel like a lot of guys got opportunities and they got starts and they made like decent
Yeah,
contributions, but
for
decent
sure.
is not good enough. Yeah, like I think he had a good World Cup, but I think he's a
I
player
was
who
expecting
could
a
have
bit
done
more.
even better and could have actually come out of this World Cup as like how Rachin
Yeah,
Ravindra, like people are talking about him. Like I think South Shakil, given the fact that the top order did not perform, could have actually had the opportunity
for
to make
sure,
some hundreds here, and
for
he
sure.
didn't as well. Like he got starts, but again, not enough. And I
Innings
think
he played against South Africa is one of the better counter-attacking innings I remember from like a Pakistani middle order batsman in a long time.
even
He
the
he
Australia
came
game
out with
as
some
well,
impact, but I think
like
it's just like
Australia.
you said, like he's a good enough player where you expected him to go bigger in a couple of those innings.
If the top order performed and South played like this, you would look at it as a fantastic World Cup. I think just with everyone else not performing, you sort of look at that as an opportunity for a guy who has the talent to have really made his mark, and maybe he would feel like a
For
little bit of
sure,
regret. But at the end of the day, like I would say, his reputation is definitely enhanced
sure,
compared to
sure,
like
sure.
other players.
Just before we
Hmm.
get the hell out of this World Cup, thoughts on the tournament, uh, moments, surprises, anything?
Yeah, like I think overall, like one thing that really struck me at the start of the tournament, maybe this changed a little bit towards the end, was just the degree of like one-sided games, and I think that was the theme throughout the World Cup. But I think having said that, like that didn't really take away from like the
Yeah,
enjoyment of the World Cup. And I feel like whenever the World Cup's on, you're always going to enjoy it. You're going to watch most games, and it was pretty fun. I feel like generally like could have been a little bit more competitive, but that's not like that was just because some teams like England, for example,
yeah,
completely imploded. Like I was not expecting that at all. Like yes, I had concerns about their bowling, but to the level that they performed, like their batting, their senior players just didn't step up at all. That was something like interesting to see. Pakistan obviously was not at the level that we would have expected. So because of that, maybe some of those close games that you get from those sort of teams,
yeah,
we didn't end up getting. Having said, like, I was really encouraged to
yeah,
see South Africa. They were a team I was excited to see before the World Cup, and I think like they have a lot of good young players. Like De Kock ne to like retirement he ले लिया one day say, but like the rest of their team, like with guys like Janssen and Kutse, I think they can
sure.
take like a lot from
Afghanistan.
this World Cup.
But
I
they've been
think they
threatening for
could
a
be
while
a
now. I think
threat.
since the 21 T20 World Cup, they have a really good assortment of players now. So they're going to be a threat going forward. Um, Afghanistan,
And
well played
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan.
like you said, I think what struck me most about them was that they come into these tournaments normally with like a lot of passion, and they obviously have close games against Pakistan. But it seemed like there was a degree
A
of
lot.
like maturity in the way they identified what they're
Yeah,
good at and what they're not good at. They're like, okay, we have the bowlers on these pitches to make it tough for anyone chasing. So let's just get to those 270 to 80 scores. And they backed players who you would call them like genuinely like red ball players,
yeah.
like in Rahmat Shah and I forgot
Ibrahim
the other guy,
Zadran
the
and
captain.
yeah, Shahidi. Yeah,
Yeah, so these guys like they batted quite slow in most games, but at the end of the day, they got them to totals that got the job
yeah.
done. So like fair play
I think
to
they
Trot as well.
maximized their talent,
He's
right?
had really
Like they had such a
yeah.
great method, like what you were talking about. Jonathan Trott was there, obviously. I think Ajay Jadeja might have been in their camp, and then
It was a method Pakistan used to good effect when we weren't actually that good of
yeah,
a one day side.
true, true,
Like in the Misfire, like 2015 World Cup, like we
and
just
then
get to a score,
for
and then
sure.
even if we didn't have the best bowling attack, like
Misbah was it's something I don't think we
yeah,
appreciated at
exactly.
that
Yeah.
time, but you give that guy 220, 230, and he'll make you fight tooth and nail for that.
Yeah, he'll make a game out of it. Yeah,
That was his talent as a
for
captain for
sure.
sure, which is, as we're finding out now, it's a very rare skill what he had. But no, awesome
Yeah.
Afghanistan. They were brave. They played the extra spinner against us. They played Noor Ahmed, and that's probably part of what won them the game. And yeah, really good tournament for them. Obviously, had their hopes dashed by what was like maybe probably the best one day innings that we've ever seen. Not probably, it was the best one day innings we've ever
Yeah.
seen. That
Dude, that
was
was
magic.
insane. Glenn Maxwell on one leg, freaking
Yeah,
just standing
yeah.
and delivering.
I,
It's not-
Now, if I look
something
back
out
on
of
like
this
some of
world.
the World Cups I've watched, like 2011, I remember for Shahid Afridi, captaining in that Starman pose. 2015, Brendan McCullum, Mitchell Stark. These are the two players that come to mind. 2019, probably Ben Stokes. This time around, who is it for you?
I think like
Yeah,
the Indian bowlers, man, like the fast
yeah,
bowlers, like Mohammad Shami, for example, Bumrah in certain games. I think like those guys were really, really impressive. Like I think mostly because yes, like I rated them as bowlers, but I didn't expect like the
sure.
level of performance that they delivered. I expected Indian spinners to be good, like Jadeja and Yadav, but like the way Shami and Co like ripped apart batting lineups, I think that was really impressive. And then a guy like I again we'd seen a little bit of in Pakistan when he played Rachin Ravindra, but not to the level that he
It was awesome, man.
showed during this World Cup. Like I was very impressed by him. Yeah,
I think for me, the players I'll probably remember this World Cup by, or it's hard to look past like a Shami or a Kohli, but if I had to pick from India, I'd actually go with Sharma for a lot of that Brendan McCullum-ness, right?
yeah.
Like those lightning quick starts and just the kaptani, and proved to be a very inspirational lead from the front type guy. And on that very same note of like a lead from the front type dude, bro, like Pat Cummins, man, like he's the modern day Imran Khan, isn't he? With his all round ability,
Yeah,
and then being a fast bowling captain and being a brave captain, I think he really epitomized leadership in this entire tournament with so many things, bro. Like obviously decisions on the field, but you saw him in pressers, and you look at them retrospectively now, and you're like, how did I not know for sure that this guy was gonna win the World Cup? Like you just see him um, talking about silencing crowds and whatnot. Like even throughout the year, talking about winning the Test Championship and the ODI World Cup. I think this is his year for sure. And then add to the fact that he's an amazing fucking bowler too, and he really has it all going from there. I think I'll remember the tournament for him as well.
one thing I was just thinking about as you spoke was obviously we spoke about Afghanistan. Like in normally like you would expect if they did well Rashid or Mujib to have like an outstanding tournament, and I feel like they were good, but they didn't have an outstanding tournament to the level where like okay, you're like if
Rush just
Afghanistan do
take
well
like
then they
30
would have to do
wickets or
it because
something
of these
like
players.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly, but like they didn't, and they still performed so well and came like again Maxwell's out of
was
this world innings it took
yeah, for
that
sure,
to
for
stop
sure.
them. So yeah, fair play to them as well. Any biggest disappointment for you on Pakistan?
एक का नाम लूं ना, एक का नाम लूं
वो
तो
तो
सही
है
नहीं
ही है।
लगेगा.
हाँ, बात सही है।
अब आई थिंक इस चैप्टर को क्लोज कर लेते हैं ब्रो, प्लीज प्लीज.
Yeah, honestly, disappointing World Cup. Let's be honest. जो भी हुआ इनमें, a little bit of
No,
pleasure
no,
from the
no.
final.
You said at the beginning, I got a lot of pleasure for that. That's not gonna. I'm not gonna lie and say I didn't, bro. That's not gonna change. I'm sorry to any of y'all listening, but it
Exactly.
is what it is, bro.
That was another episode of Not That Important. Thank you to everyone who's listening. And if you are a regular listener and you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. It just gives us the affirmation that there's actually people who want to listen to what we have to say, and gives us the motivation to continue to, produce episodes and talk about the team and sport that we love. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.